Sarah Martinez walked through the busy downtown plaza, holding her 6-year-old son Tommy's hand tightly. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between the tall buildings as people hurried past them. Tommy clutched a small toy airplane in his free hand, making quiet whooshing sounds as they walked. Sarah looked like any other mother enjoying a day out with her child. She wore simple jeans and a light blue sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Nobody would guess that underneath her ordinary appearance lay years of intense military training and experience that most people could never imagine. "Mom, can we get ice cream?" Tommy asked, pointing to a colorful cart near the fountain. "Of course, buddy." Sarah smiled, leading him toward the vendor. As they approached the ice cream cart, Sarah noticed 3 men standing near the fountain's edge. Something about their body language made her alert. Years of training had taught her to read people quickly. These men weren't just hanging around casually. They were watching, waiting. The first man was tall and muscular, with tattoos covering his arms. The second was shorter but stockier, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. The third man kept checking his phone, but his eyes were scanning the crowd, not looking at his screen. Sarah's instincts kicked in, but she kept her expression normal. She didn't want to frighten Tommy or cause unnecessary panic. Maybe she was being too careful. Maybe these were just ordinary guys hanging out. "What flavor do you want, sweetie?" she asked Tommy, keeping her voice light while staying aware of her surroundings. "Chocolate? Please," Tommy exclaimed, bouncing on his toes. As Sarah ordered the ice cream, she caught pieces of conversation from the 3 men. They were talking in low voices, but her trained hearing picked up certain words that made her blood run cold. "When she comes back this way, make it look like an accident. The kid won't be a problem." Sarah's heart started beating faster, but she kept her face calm. She paid for Tommy's ice cream with steady hands, though every muscle in her body was now on high alert. These men weren't random strangers. They were planning something, and it involved her and Tommy. "Here you go, buddy," she said, handing Tommy his chocolate ice cream cone. As they walked away from the cart, Sarah tried to think quickly. The plaza had several exits, but the men had positioned themselves strategically. They could see all the main paths. Sarah needed to get Tommy to safety, but she also needed to figure out who these people were and why they were targeting her. Tommy chattered happily about his ice cream, completely unaware of the danger. Sarah kept walking at a normal pace, not wanting to alert the men that she had noticed them, but she could feel their eyes following her every move. "Mom, why are those men looking at us?" Tommy suddenly asked, proving that children notice more than adults give them credit for. "I'm not sure, honey," Sarah replied honestly. "But don't worry. Mommy will keep you safe." She steered Tommy toward a nearby bench, pretending to let him finish his ice cream while she thought about their options. The men were still watching, trying to look casual but failing. Sarah's military training helped her count exits, identify potential weapons, and assess escape routes, all while appearing to simply supervise her son's snack time. "Tommy," she said quietly, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. In a few minutes, we're going to play a special game. When I say run, I want you to go straight to that security guard over there by the big store. Can you see him?" Tommy looked where his mother pointed and nodded seriously. "Yes, Mom. Good boy. Tell him that your mommy sent you, and that she needs help. Can you remember that?" "Yes," Tommy whispered, sensing that this wasn't really a game. Sarah watched the 3 men start to move closer. They were trying to surround the bench without being obvious about it. Her mind raced through possible scenarios. She could handle 3 men easily under normal circumstances, but protecting Tommy while fighting was a completely different challenge. The tall man with tattoos was approaching from the left, using the crowd as cover. The man in the baseball cap was coming from the right, pretending to look at his phone. The third man was walking straight toward them, carrying a newspaper but watching Sarah over the top of it. Sarah's hands remained relaxed at her sides, but every nerve in her body was ready for action. Years of combat training had taught her to stay calm under pressure. But this was different. This time, her child's safety was at stake. "Tommy," she said softly, "get ready." The man with the newspaper was only 20 feet away now. He folded the paper and put it under his arm, his hand moving towards something concealed in his jacket. Sarah saw the movement and knew their time was up, but then something unexpected happened. A group of teenagers with skateboards came rolling through the plaza, laughing and calling to each other. They created a temporary distraction, blocking the view between Sarah and the three men. Sarah didn't waste the opportunity. She scooped Tommy up in her arms and moved quickly but calmly toward a different exit, using the skateboarding teenagers as cover. She hoped the men hadn't noticed her movement yet. "Mom, what's happening?" Tommy asked, wrapping his arms around her neck. "Everything's okay, baby. We're just going a different way today." But as they reached the edge of the plaza, Sarah realized the men had anticipated this move. The stocky man in the baseball cap was already at the exit, pretending to tie his shoe but clearly waiting for them. Sarah stopped, holding Tommy close. She was trapped between the three men with nowhere to run. The plaza was crowded, which meant she couldn't use her full combat skills without risking innocent people getting hurt. The man with the newspaper was approaching again, his hand definitely on a weapon now. The tall man with tattoos was moving to block any escape route back into the plaza. The man in the baseball cap stood up slowly, revealing a cold smile. Sarah Martinez. The man with the newspaper called out loud enough for her to hear, but not loud enough to attract attention from other people. "We just want to talk." Sarah knew that was a lie. Men who just wanted to talk didn't corner a woman and her child in a public place. They didn't carry concealed weapons or position themselves strategically for an attack. "I don't know what you want," Sarah called back, "but this isn't the place or time." "Oh, but it is exactly the right time," the man replied, taking another step closer. Sarah set Tommy down gently behind her, keeping her body between him and the approaching threat. Her mind was calculating distances, angles, and possibilities. She needed to disable these men quickly and efficiently, while keeping Tommy completely safe. "Tommy," she whispered, "when I move, you run to that security guard like we talked about. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. Just run." "But Mom." "No buts, sweetheart. Promise me." "I promise," Tommy said in a small voice. The three men were now close enough that Sarah could see their faces clearly. These weren't random criminals. They moved with training, with purpose. Someone had sent them specifically for her. And they had done their homework about her daily routines. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. Who knew she would be here today? Who had access to her schedule? Who would want to hurt her or her son? Then she remembered the phone call from earlier that week. A man claiming to be from Tommy's school, asking about pickup times and routes. She had thought it was suspicious then, but had dismissed it as overcautiousness. Now she realized it had been surveillance. "Last chance to do this the easy way," the man with the newspaper said, his hand now clearly gripping something under his jacket. Sarah's response was swift and decisive. In one fluid motion, she pushed Tommy toward the security guard and spun to face the nearest threat. Her years of Navy SEAL training kicked in automatically. The man in the baseball cap rushed forward, thinking he could grab her while she was distracted. He learned very quickly that he had made a serious mistake. Sarah's elbow connected with his solar plexus with surgical precision, dropping him to the ground, gasping for air. The tall man with tattoos pulled out a knife, but Sarah was already moving. She grabbed his wrist, twisted sharply, and sent the weapon clattering across the pavement. A quick knee to his midsection, and he joined his partner on the ground. The man with the newspaper had pulled out a gun, but he hesitated when he saw how quickly his partners had been defeated. That hesitation cost him everything. Sarah closed the distance between them in seconds, disarmed him with a move that looked almost like dancing, and had him face down on the pavement before most people in the plaza even realized something was happening. "Security! Police!" Sarah called out loudly, keeping the three men pinned down with techniques that would be familiar to any military combat instructor, but looked impossible to civilian observers. Tommy had reached the security guard and was tugging on his uniform, pointing back toward his mother. Other people in the plaza were starting to notice the commotion and pulling out their phones. "Everyone stay back," Sarah commanded, in a voice that carried absolute authority. These men are dangerous. Someone call 911. The three attackers were groaning on the ground, thoroughly defeated and completely unable to move due to Sarah's precise application of pressure points and joint locks. They had expected to overpower a regular civilian mother. Instead, they had encountered a trained warrior who could disable multiple armed opponents without breaking a sweat. As sirens approached in the distance, Sarah kept her position over the three men while scanning the area for any additional threats. Her training told her that operations like this rarely involved only three people. There could be backup, lookouts, or getaway drivers nearby. Tommy was safe with the security guard, but Sarah wouldn't relax until she was absolutely certain the threat was over. She had questions that needed answers, and these three men were going to provide them. The police arrived within minutes, but Sarah didn't release her hold on the three men until she saw uniformed officers approaching. She had learned through years of experience never to assume safety until backup was confirmed and secured. "Ma'am, please step away from the suspects," the lead officer called out, his hand resting on his weapon but not drawing it. He could see that Sarah was in control of the situation. "These men attempted to assault me and my son," Sarah said clearly, slowly moving away from the subdued attackers while keeping her hands visible. "They were armed and had positioned themselves to ambush us." Detective Maria Rodriguez arrived on scene shortly after the patrol units. She was a 20-year veteran who had seen every kind of crime. But something about this situation felt different. Three grown men, all with military-style tattoos and builds suggesting combat training, had been completely disabled by a woman who looked like she worked in an office. "Can you tell me exactly what happened here?" Detective Rodriguez asked Sarah while paramedics checked on the three men. Sarah gave a clear, precise account of events, sticking to observable facts and avoiding any mention of her military background. She had learned long ago that revealing her Navy SEAL training often complicated situations rather than helping them. "These men knew my name," Sarah explained. "They had been watching us and planning this encounter. This wasn't a random crime." Detective Rodriguez examined the weapons that had been recovered. A military-style knife, a 9mm pistol, and what appeared to be a taser. "Ma'am, what's your background?" "Most people can't disarm three armed men without getting hurt." "I took some self-defense classes," Sarah replied simply. Tommy ran to his mother as soon as the officers said it was safe. Sarah hugged him tightly, checking him for any injuries even though he had been with the security guard the entire time. "Mom, you were like a superhero," Tommy whispered, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and amazement. "Just someone who wants to keep you safe, buddy," Sarah replied, smoothing his hair. While the three attackers were loaded into ambulances and then police cars, Detective Rodriguez continued her investigation. She ran their identification through the system and found something interesting. "Mrs. Martinez. These men all have military backgrounds. Two of them served in Afghanistan, one in Iraq. They're not your typical street criminals," the detective said quietly. "Do you have any idea why trained soldiers would target you specifically?" Sarah's mind was racing, but she kept her expression neutral. "I have no idea. I work in accounting and live a very quiet life." That wasn't entirely true. Sarah did work in accounting now, but her previous career was something she never discussed. Very few people knew that Sarah Martinez had spent 8 years as a Navy SEAL, completing missions in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. After giving her statement and providing contact information, Sarah was allowed to leave with Tommy. But she knew this wasn't over. Professional soldiers didn't randomly target accountants and their children. Someone had sent them, and that someone was still out there. That evening, after Tommy was asleep, Sarah made a phone call to a number she hadn't dialed in 3 years. "Peterson," a gruff voice answered. "Commander, it's Sarah Martinez. I need to talk." There was a long pause. Commander Peterson had been Sarah's commanding officer during her final years as a SEAL. He was one of only a handful of people who knew her real identity and current location. "Sarah, you sound stressed. 3 men with military backgrounds tried to grab me and Tommy today in downtown. They knew my name and had planned the operation. This wasn't random." Another pause, longer this time. "Where are you now?" "Home. But I don't think we're safe here." Someone found me, Commander. After all these years, someone tracked me down. Pack light and be ready to move, Peterson said immediately. I'm making some calls. Don't go anywhere until you hear from me. Sarah spent the next hour gathering essential items and cash while Tommy slept. She had hoped those days were over, but her training kicked in automatically. Go bags, escape routes, emergency protocols. It all came back like muscle memory. Her phone rang at 11:30 p.m. Peterson again. It's worse than we thought, he said without preamble. The 3 men who attacked you were hired through intermediaries. But I traced it back. Remember Operation Ghost Harbor? Sarah's blood went cold. Ghost Harbor had been her final mission as a SEAL. And it had gone very wrong. The operation was supposed to be a simple intelligence-gathering mission in Eastern Europe, but they had stumbled into something much bigger. I remember, she said quietly. Viktor Kozlov is out of prison. He got released 6 months ago. And intelligence suggests he's been tracking down everyone who was involved in that operation. Sarah, he blames us for destroying his organization. Viktor Kozlov had been an arms dealer with connections to terrorist groups around the world. Operation Ghost Harbor had resulted in the capture of Kozlov and the dismantling of his entire network, saving countless lives. But it had also made Sarah and her team permanent targets. How many of the others has he found? Sarah asked. Though she was afraid of the answer, Johnson was killed in a car accident in Denver last month. Martinez, the other Martinez, not you, died in what looked like a home invasion in Phoenix 3 weeks ago. Sarah, he's systematically eliminating everyone from that mission. Sarah felt her world spinning. These weren't just random attacks. This was revenge. Planned and executed by someone with resources and patience. What about my new identity? How did he find me? We're still working on that. But it doesn't matter now. Your cover is blown. You and Tommy need to disappear tonight. Sarah looked at her sleeping son and felt her heart breaking. Tommy had never known about her past, had never experienced the dangerous world she had left behind. But that world had found them anyway. Where do we go? I'm sending you coordinates. There's a safe house in Colorado that's off all official records. You'll meet Agent Collins there tomorrow night. He'll help you establish new identities. Sarah wrote down the information. Her hands steady, despite the fear in her heart. Commander, Tommy doesn't know about any of this. He thinks I'm just his mom who works in accounting. Kids are stronger than we give them credit for, Sarah. You'll figure out how to handle it. But right now, staying alive is more important than protecting his innocence. After ending the call, Sarah sat in her kitchen, staring at the coordinates written on a piece of paper. 3 hours ago, her biggest worry was whether Tommy would eat his vegetables at dinner. Now she was planning to run for their lives. She went to Tommy's room and gently shook him awake. Mom, what time is it? Tommy mumbled, rubbing his eyes. We need to take a little trip, sweetie. Remember how I told you that sometimes grown-ups have to do things that seem strange but are important? Tommy sat up, more alert now. Are we in trouble because of what happened today? Sarah was amazed by how perceptive her son could be. Not trouble. Exactly. But there are some bad people who might want to hurt us. So we need to go somewhere safe for a while. Like when superheroes have to hide their secret identities? Something like that, Sarah said, grateful for Tommy's love of comic books. Can you help me pack some of your favorite things? Just what fits in your backpack. As Tommy gathered his belongings, Sarah made final preparations. She left cash on the kitchen counter for her landlord, along with a note saying she had a family emergency. She wiped down surfaces to remove fingerprints and disabled the security system. By 2 a.m., they were on the road in Sarah's car, heading west toward Colorado. Tommy fell asleep in the passenger seat after the first hour, clutching his toy airplane. Sarah drove through the night, constantly checking her mirrors for any signs of pursuit. She took a circuitous route, avoiding major highways and stopping frequently to check for surveillance. As the sun came up over the mountains, Sarah realized this was the moment her old life finally caught up with her new one. She had spent 6 years building a normal life for herself and Tommy, working hard to forget the violence and danger of her military career. But some things can never be completely left behind. Some enemies never forget, and some debts always come due. The safe house was another 12 hours away, and Sarah had no idea what would happen when they arrived. All she knew was that her son's life depended on her ability to become the person she used to be. A highly trained warrior capable of protecting those she loved at any cost. Tommy stirred as they passed through a small mountain town. "Mom, where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, baby. Somewhere no one can hurt us." "Will we ever go home?" Sarah looked at her son's trusting face and made a promise to herself. Whatever it took, whoever she had to become again, she would make sure Tommy had the chance to grow up safely. "We'll make a new home," she said. "I'll make sure no one can ever find us." The safe house turned out to be a cabin hidden deep in the Colorado mountains, accessible only by a narrow dirt road that wound through thick pine trees. Agent Collins was waiting for them when they arrived. A thin man in his 50s with kind eyes but a serious expression. "You made good time," Collins said, helping Sarah carry their bags inside. "I've got everything set up for new documentation. But we need to talk about your long-term options." Tommy explored the cabin while the adults talked. It had a cozy living room with a stone fireplace, 2 bedrooms, and a kitchen stocked with enough food for several weeks. "How secure is this location?" Sarah asked, checking the windows and noting the reinforced door frames. "As secure as we can make it without official involvement. The property is owned through shell companies. No government records, no digital footprint." "But Sarah, you can't hide forever. Kozlov has resources and patience. He'll keep looking." Sarah had been thinking about this during the long drive. Running and hiding might keep them alive short-term, but it wasn't a permanent solution. Tommy deserved better than a life spent looking over their shoulders. "What if we don't run?" she asked. Collins raised an eyebrow. "You want to fight?" "Sarah, Kozlov has hired professionals. The 3 men yesterday were just the first wave. He's not going to stop until you're dead. Then maybe it's time to stop playing defense," Sarah replied, watching Tommy arrange his toys on the cabin's coffee table. "How many people from the Ghost Harbor team are still alive?" "You and Williams. That's it. 5 others confirmed dead over the past 8 months. Williams was Sarah's former partner, a demolitions expert who had saved their entire team during the final phase of Operation Ghost Harbor. If anyone could help her end this threat permanently, it was Williams. Where is Williams now? Underground, like you were. But he might be willing to come out of hiding if it means stopping Kozlov once and for all." That evening, after Tommy was asleep, Sarah video called Williams using Collins's secure communication system. When his familiar face appeared on the screen, Sarah felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Williams looked older, more tired, but his eyes still held the same sharp intelligence she remembered. "Sarah Martinez, or whatever you're calling yourself these days," Williams said with a slight smile. "Collins told me what happened. You okay?" "I'm alive. Tommy's safe. But this has to end." Williams nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. Lost too many good people already." "What did you have in mind?" "Have in mind, Kozlov expects us to hide. He's hunting us one by one because he thinks we're scattered and afraid. What if we give him exactly what he wants?" "You want to use yourself as bait," Williams said. It wasn't a question. "Tommy and I can't keep living like this. Either we end this threat permanently, or we spend the rest of our lives running. Those aren't acceptable options for my son." Collins looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, what you're talking about is essentially an unauthorized military operation. I can't officially support this." "Then don't make it official," Sarah replied. "Williams, are you in?" Williams was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "I'm in, but we do this smart. Full intelligence gathering, proper planning, backup contingencies. We don't go in blind like cowboys." Over the next 3 days, they developed a plan. Collins used his intelligence contacts to locate Kozlov, who was staying at a heavily guarded compound outside Las Vegas. The arms dealer was apparently celebrating his freedom and planning his next moves against the remaining Ghost Harbor team members. Sarah would return to her hometown under her real name, making herself visible and vulnerable. When Kozlov's people came for her, Williams would be in position to capture or eliminate them. The goal was to force Kozlov into the open where they could end the threat permanently. "Mom, why do you look so serious all the time now?" Tommy asked on their third morning at the cabin. Sarah sat down next to her son, choosing her words carefully. "Tommy, I need to tell you something important about who I used to be before you were born." Tommy put down his toy airplane and gave her his full attention. "Before I was your mom, I was a soldier. A very special kind of soldier who went to dangerous places and stopped bad people from hurting innocent families. Like a superhero? Kind of like that. But some of those bad people are still angry about being stopped. And one of them is trying to hurt us now." Tommy was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "Is that why you could fight those men yesterday?" "Yes, sweetie. I learned how to protect people when I was a soldier. And now I need to use those skills one more time to make sure we can have a normal life again." "Are you going to fight the bad man who's looking for us?" Sarah hugged her son tightly. "I'm going to make sure he can never hurt you or anyone else ever again." 2 days later, Sarah and Tommy returned to their hometown. She deliberately used her credit cards, went to familiar places, and made no effort to hide their presence. Collins monitored police communications, while Williams positioned himself at strategic locations around the city. The response was swift. Within 24 hours, surveillance teams appeared near their house. Within 48 hours, Sarah identified at least 6 operatives watching her movements and Tommy's school. On the third day, they made their move. Sarah dropped Tommy at school as usual. But instead of going to work, she drove to an industrial area on the outskirts of town. This was the location she and Williams had chosen for the confrontation. Isolated enough to avoid civilian casualties, but accessible enough to force Kozlov's people to make their move. She parked her car and waited. Within minutes, 2 black SUVs appeared at either end of the street, blocking her escape routes. Sarah smiled grimly. Some things never changed. 8 men emerged from the vehicles, all armed and moving with military precision. But Sarah wasn't the helpless accountant they expected to find. Williams emerged from a concealed position behind one of the SUVs, taking down 2 men with non-lethal shots before they knew he was there. Sarah exited her car and engaged the remaining 6 operatives with the same deadly efficiency she had demonstrated at the plaza. The fight was over in less than 2 minutes. 8 highly trained mercenaries were unconscious or disabled, and Sarah hadn't suffered so much as a bruise. "Just like old times," Williams said, zip-tying the unconscious men. "Better," Sarah replied. "This time we're fighting for something that actually matters." They didn't kill the operatives. Instead, they used Collins' contacts to turn them over to federal authorities as part of a larger investigation into illegal arms trafficking. The evidence gathered from Kozlov's men led to raids on several safe houses and the seizure of enough weapons to supply a small army. But Viktor Kozlov himself remained at large. "He'll run now," Williams said as they regrouped at a secure location. "Knows, his operation here is blown." "Maybe," Sarah replied. "Or maybe he's angry enough to come after us personally." She was right. Kozlov appeared at Tommy's school the next afternoon, accompanied by 4 bodyguards and demanding to speak with Sarah Martinez. The school immediately went into lockdown and called the police, but Kozlov wasn't planning to wait for negotiations. Sarah received the call while she was 3 miles away. Tommy was trapped inside the school with an international criminal who blamed her for destroying his life. "Williams, I need you at Jefferson Elementary. Now." "On my way." "What's the situation?" "Kozlov has Tommy's school surrounded. This ends today." Sarah arrived at the school to find police setting up a perimeter, but she knew they weren't equipped to handle someone like Kozlov. She also knew that negotiations would fail because this wasn't about money or politics. This was about revenge. Using skills she hoped never to need again, Sarah infiltrated the school through a maintenance entrance while Williams created a distraction at the main entrance. She moved through hallways filled with hiding children and terrified teachers, following the sound of Kozlov's voice toward the principal's office. She found him holding Tommy at gunpoint while his bodyguards watched the entrances. Kozlov looked older than she remembered, more desperate. But his eyes held the same cold intelligence that had made him so dangerous years ago. "Sarah Martinez, the phantom soldier," Kozlov said when she appeared in the doorway. "You destroyed everything I built. Killed my men, stole my weapons, left me to rot in prison. You were selling weapons to terrorists, Sarah replied calmly, keeping her hands visible. People who would have used them to kill innocent families. And now I'm going to kill yours, Kozlov said, pressing the gun against Tommy's head. Tommy looked terrified but didn't cry. He looked at his mother with complete trust, believing somehow that she would save him. Let the boy go, Sarah said. Your fight is with me, not him. The boy is the only reason you'll cooperate, Kozlov replied. You and William surrender now, or he dies. Sarah appeared to consider this, letting her shoulders slump in apparent defeat. You win. Just don't hurt my son. Kozlov smiled, thinking he had finally achieved his revenge. That moment of satisfaction cost him everything. Sarah moved faster than his bodyguards could react, disarming the nearest man and using him as a shield while engaging the others. Tommy dropped to the floor, as Sarah had taught him during their emergency training sessions at the cabin. The fight was brutal but brief. Sarah's years of combat experience and desperate motivation to protect her son made her unstoppable. Within seconds, 3 bodyguards were unconscious and Kozlov was on the ground, his weapon out of reach. Williams arrived just as police burst through the main entrance. The threat was over. Kozlov was in custody, and Tommy was safe. Later that evening, after giving statements to federal agents and ensuring Tommy was okay, Sarah sat with her son in their living room. Is it over now? Tommy asked. Yes, baby, it's over. The bad man can never hurt us again. Mom, are you really a superhero? Sarah smiled, pulling Tommy close. No, sweetie. I'm just a mom who learned how to fight so she could protect the people she loves. 6 months later, Sarah and Tommy moved to a new city where she took a job as a security consultant. She never used her combat skills again, but the knowledge that she could protect her son if necessary gave her peace of mind. Tommy started at a new school, where he told everyone his mom was the coolest person in the world. When asked why, he would simply say, because she's brave and she keeps me safe. Sarah had finally found the balance between her past and her future. She was no longer running from who she used to be. But she wasn't defined by it either. She was simply a mother who would do anything to protect her child. And sometimes, that was exactly the kind of hero the world needed.